right, let's kick things off with a bit of the Venus planetary gong. We are in Venus retrograde after all. Perhaps we could see this as a ceremonial gonging of honoring the beautiful plant medicine of cannabis to legal territory in Canada. So I've actually done a talk on this subject before, and I've written about this before. I wrote some articles called Rethinking Marijuana, Part 1 and Part 2, somewhere buried in my Facebook notes for those who want to delve deep. So I just wanted to rehash, because today is the great day that Canada has legalized marijuana, and I know there's a lot of hoopla and excitement about that, but at the same time there's a lot of reservation, and people are offering their own kind of takes on the pros and the cons of this. So I thought I'd delve in as well, because I think I have some important knowledge to share on the subject. I am a cannabis user that has been using it since I was a teenager, which is probably the norm for most people. But I've gone through many different revisings of my relationship with cannabis to just take you up to speed of where I am right now at the present. I recently completed the Presence process, which is a 10-week transformational meditation program, and this is the second time I've done this. And while you're doing the Presence process, you are not allowed to do anything psychoactive. So I didn't consume any cannabis for pretty much 3 months, aside from having a bit of cannabis at the Cannabis retreat, the beautiful retreat that I was a part of during the Cannabis Ceremony we did with some beautiful Mayan elder friends. But aside from that, I've been completely, I guess I'll say the word clean, although that doesn't seem necessarily right. But I've been clean from cannabis for about 3 months, and it's been absolutely amazing, actually, to go through another long bout of not using it. I went through a year, actually, of not using it while I was studying Chinese medicine. And I want to delve into a bit of that and why, because I think this is something that not a lot of people know about. So cannabis is a wonderful plant. We all know all the wonderful uses, whether it's hemp or the CBD oil or THC as well. So many artists, musicians, creators have used cannabis as a way to open up creative, expansive perspectives. And then, of course, if you go back into ancient times, you have Shiva in the Vedic culture. Apparently, Shiva worshippers, Shiva brought cannabis to humanity as a means to connect us to our spirituality in a deeper way. And in large part, actually, in ancient times, marijuana was used as a spiritual tool, as far as I can understand from my research. And I think that's part of the reason that people are feeling a little of the cynicism about the legalization. I've seen a few people posting about, how we have to be careful, that we live in an entitled consumer culture where we just latch on to anything that's vogue, and we use it usually in ways that maybe even cultural inappropriate ways that are really divorced from the appropriate use of what that medicine is intended for. And this is Western culture, and we're all in that culture, and we have to be wise to know that this entitlement culture is very much conditioned right down to the marrow of our being. And I'm definitely one who's been guilty of that as well, in the misuse of different substances, including marijuana. So I think we owe it to ourselves to really acknowledge, the history of this plant and have reverence for it as a true ally in the healing domain. And a lot of cannabis use is fairly casual, and I think we have to really look into that. In fact, I run a usually monthly cannabis ceremony at the House of Yoga. We just did one on the past weekend. So we vape cannabis together after we prayed to the medicine and invoked Santa Maria, which is one of the feminine goddess aspects of the plant, or the plant spirit aspects. And then I do a kind of sound bath of improvised song channeling and such, and guiding meditations. And really the intention for the whole experience is for people to come and experience marijuana as a spiritual tool that can help us to connect with that Shiva consciousness, that transcendent universal state of mind that is kind of the essence of spirituality. But even moreover than that, it's kind of a bit of a Trojan horse in that I want people to come and experience marijuana in that way, so that maybe if they have casual usage in their life, like maybe they use it daily and a lot of people just smoke and watch Netflix and stuff like that, maybe they'll actually start to rethink about how they're using the plant, and how it should be used in an appropriate moderation, which of course is unique to each individual. Now, why moderation is important, this is where the Chinese medicine comes into play, and why I actually gave up marijuana for a year. And then when I actually invited it back into my life, I did so in a very intentional and different manner than how I had related to the plant medicine before. So in Chinese medicine, marijuana is known as a liver herb, and it's also a cold herb energetically, which is interesting because I know a lot of people feel like we're burning it, so there must be heat involved. No, really, marijuana itself, it's cold energetically, and it's said to actually paralyze the function of the liver. Now, the liver in Chinese medicine, like all the organs, have many different capacities than we know from our Western physiology. For one, in the five-element or ancient Taoist tradition of Chinese medicine, the vital organs are known as officials, specifically government officials. They all preside over different physiology, but also different philosophical principles, different virtues, and different emotionality. And they're all given a proper stead in the governing of our being. So you have the heart, of course, is the sovereign, the king, queen. The lungs are the prime minister. And the liver is actually known as the general. And the qualities that imbue it with that title are the liver has the ability to strategize and plan our life. It's also connected with powers of vision. So it gives us that beautiful vision, and then it allows us the strategy to implement, to manifest that vision in our life. Now, the liver also has this incredible connection to the astral body, presides over a spirit called the Hun in Chinese. Now, the Hun is very connected with that astral body. Every night when we dream, it's that Hun energy that we're experiencing in the psychological playground of our dreams, which are really a place where we get to try out things psychologically that we may not be able to or are repressed in our everyday life. It's kind of a release valve for the psyche as well. And of course, we see this in a beautiful relation in the physiology of the liver in Western medicine. The blood goes to the liver at night to be cleansed. And interestingly, in Chinese medicine, the blood carries the Shen, or the spirit, in us all. So in a way, the liver is cleaning our soul every night, and dreams are a very powerful way that the soul is being cleaned. Interesting, eh? I found that really fascinating. So let me break this down. When you are smoking marijuana, the reason people have so many amazing visions when they're high or stoned is because that natural visioning capacity of the liver, very connected to that Han, that dreaming body that we have, it's slowed down so that the visionary powers are all very magnified and very amplified, which is a boon if someone is using it in moderation and intentionally using it to receive visions about their life and such. The problem is, anytime we use a herb in the body to affect an organ, it's taxing for the organ no matter what. Now, that taxation may be seen as a good thing if it's trying to curb an extremism or boost a deficiency in that organ. But over time, not allowing the organ to do its natural thing is taxing. So when you paralyze the liver's function through marijuana, it does stress the liver out. And this is where the stoner archetype turns up. So to me, the stoner is someone who has all these great visions, all these great ideas, but is just so high all the time, they don't implement the strategy. Remember the strategy of the liver to get those things done. Now, this is where I was at when I decided to give up marijuana for a year. I had all these amazing ideas, all these documents filled with all these things I wanted to do with my life, and I was just increasingly frustrated that I wasn't doing them. So in that year that I did not partake or consume cannabis, I was really surprised how much more planning I was able to implement in my life, how much more clarity of thought I had even. And there was also a lot of things to do with anxiety and such that just seemed to go away, which is interesting because I know a lot of people think marijuana is supposed to be a kind of cure for anxiety. So I saw that my liver was actually restoring itself, and it was able to implement those strategies as well. The other reason I actually quit was beyond Chinese medicine. I had actually dated a woman at the time who was working at KMH. And she told me that they were learning that one of the leading causes of psychosis in Canada at this time is cannabis, amazingly. Now, she went on to describe that there's actually a natural compound found in the cannabis plant that nullifies psychosis, which is perhaps why historically it was seen as such a boon. But nowadays, because people are obsessed with growing these powerful strains and winning the cannabis cup, they've actually grown that compound off of the plant to get as much THC as possible. So that's why a lot of the marijuana we smoke nowadays is so ultra powerful that it actually starts to do things that are counterintuitive to what the plant is naturally supposed to do, which is to really just chill us out, calm the spirit maybe even, and nullify psychosis. And this is something that I became increasingly aware of as I started to get very anxious smoking marijuana. And a few years ago, I was actually at a transformational festival, and I decided that I wasn't going to partake of marijuana for a couple days. And you know, at a lot of these transformational arts festivals, people dive into psychedelic use and stuff like that. It's all good. Sometimes I do feel it's a little wanton and too much, but I like to actually stay quite sober at those festivals. I just get such a natural high off myself and the experience. But this one night I thought, you know what, I'll take one puff off a joint just to give me that kind of microdose of marijuana. So I was in this dance tent with a friend, and he passed me this joint, and I took one puff, and then immediately I thought I was on like LSD. I was tripping out. I had heart palpitations, and I thought I was going to faint. I literally had to leave, and it took me about an hour to calm myself down. It was a very frightening experience, actually, from this plant that we're taught is pretty much harmless. Now, talking to others have had this experience as well. This is a powerful medicine, people, and it's a lot more powerful now than it used to be, especially since humans have been tampering with it. We've taken it out of its natural design, much like we've done to many, many things. So we should be balanced in our perspective of what we're dealing with now with marijuana in the 21st century. Now, after I quit marijuana for that year, people might ask, well, why did you invite it back in your life? Well, to be honest, I just felt a calling to re-relate to the plant, that there was something about the plant that I could still use in a beneficial way. So exactly a year later, I quit on New Year's Day. Next year on New Year's, I decided, you know what? I'm going to smoke marijuana, but I'm going to make a whole prayer ceremony. I'm going to light incense, sage, and I'm going to connect to the plant spirit in a very sacred way and then consume it. So I did. And I had this profound night of having these incredible visions, which I jotted down. One of them being my Chakra Journey workshop, which was the first event I ever did that sold out. And now I put it on at the yoga conference last year with a bunch of all-star friends, which was amazing. So that really showed me that, I can actually get these great visions. But then I didn't smoke the next day. I actually only smoked once a month for that year, roughly, using it only for those visionary instances. And it was very profound to use it in that way. Now, admittedly, I fell off the wagon here and there and started to casually use marijuana, or not casually, I was always kind of intentional, but I ended up using it in a more abundant frequency than once a month as the years went on. But I always had this kind of reverence, even a bit of anxiety towards the medicine, knowing that it could cause these really kind of chaotic experiences. But now where I'm really at is being clean from it for even just these 3 months was really enlightening, because I felt so clear, so focused. I'm really not even sure if I want it back in my life in much of a capacity. I did ingest it about a week ago for the first time. And again, this time I'm studying David Frawley's work on Shiva and doing a lot of Shiva mantra work and connecting with Shiva. So I took advantage of that, and I went outside my back patio where I do a lot of my meditations and prayer work, lit some candles, sage, again, the whole 9 yards, created this sacred ritual. And I set the intention that all night I'd be in that kind of universal Shiva consciousness. And so I did some vaping. And then all night, again, I had these beautiful voice memo ideas that I got. I got a really amazing perspective on issues in my life. It really showed me that marijuana can give you that kind of like objective view of things. It really opens you up to then see yourself from a very higher perspective. And that was really, really beautiful. Now, what I find though is if you smoke day after day after day and you keep on getting these higher perspectives, those higher perspectives need time to actually be brought into our reality and worked on. It really just, the eternal needs the temporal to be bridged in a certain way. And if you're just smoking every day and you're getting all these amazing ideas, there's just going to be a logjam at a certain point, which will probably lead to frustration, even anger and impatience, which is the liver's emotional signal that it's out of balance, anger and frustration. And it's also interesting to note that even just smoking that one night, I did find myself the next day observing I was a little more irritable than usual. So it showed me that even just one night of vaping after about 3 months of not partaking the medicine, there was a bit of that taxation in the liver that I could see the next day, which was really interesting. So ultimately, I'm really glad that marijuana and cannabis is being legalized. I think a lot of these substances, even like mushrooms, psilocybin, LSD, a lot of these entheogens and psychedelics, I really feel could be used in a new kind of revolutionary medical environment where they could be really integrated as consciousness medicines. The problem and the cynicism that I bring to bear on this is that we just don't have that maturity yet as a culture. And I see that the way people approach marijuana still, people just are so casual with their usage. People use it so copiously. And I think there's a real disconnect. And I think people have to really take a moment to really just objectively and soberly look at your relationship with marijuana and just have that reverence for how powerful a medicine and beautiful plant spirit this is. And just get a sense, is there perhaps a new way you want to negotiate your relationship with this plant, as I did, and I found so much success and such a boon in that. So don't want to put a damper on things too much. I think today is a day that we should celebrate. I think there's lots of potentials, at least, that are opened up now that were not there before. And if anything, these kinds of conversations that I'm trying to incite, and I see others are inciting them as well, they're just going to get richer and richer. And I think it's good for us to now have full responsibility for our relationship with this plant rather than having authority figures and stuff deal with it for us. I think human beings, for a long time, there's been so many things that we've been told we can't handle or what have you, and we never develop our responsibility then with it. And when you look at like the decriminalization of all drugs in places like Portugal and how they really haven't had an issue as well, it shows you that human beings, when they're really given this stuff without the shame of it being illegal and stuff like that, there is a kind of moral guiding sense in all of us that can be brought to bear and help us figure out what the appropriate use is to us. But I do feel like we need to hold a more mature standpoint, especially when we think about the young people and how now they're going to be entering a culture where, it's all right to use marijuana. It's all right to watch porn. It's all right to like do all these things that, there's a bunch of sickness in our culture. We should be vigilant of that. And I also want to note that a friend of mine who's very close to Native American First Nation elders, she shared with me that there's been a lot of elders in Canada who have been, or Turtle Island for them, who have been sitting and praying on this issue of marijuana legalization and really trying to connect to the plant medicine itself to see what does it really want. And they're definitely getting a feeling of concern from the medicine itself, the plant spirit, that there is a lot of misuse that needs to be rectified. So I always feel, in my life at least, the First Nations are the leaders for me. They have that spiritual wisdom intact, that eco-spirituality that we who have lost our indigenousness connection, we really need to take heed of that wisdom. So to me, that's one of the most grave warnings out there that I've received. And I think we should really, really sit with that. These are coming from people who have sat with many, many medicines and know how to use the medicines of Mother Earth with love and reverence and honor, and knowing that our culture, Western civilization, it is a culture of dishonor and appropriation, and there's a lot of immaturity there for us. So aside from that, celebrate it as you will. This is a beautiful time, and I think there's going to be, as I said, a lot of amazing dimensions that will open up with that. Just wanted to share all of that. Let's lead us out with a bit more Venus as we continue our adventure in the Venus retrograde until early November. Hope you're all feeling some beautiful upgrades about love and ultimately finding beautiful ways to self-love yourself, because I really feel that's the ultimate theme of Venus retrograde, is that all that love we're looking for outside in the world, from others and such, it's truly right here in your heart. You are the source of your unconditional love. So just let this frequency of the planet call you into your own heart, to that own self-love that you have. Keep the peace.